Today I am opening up a brand new sketchbook and we are gonna do a fun thing that I like to do in my sketchbooks, and it is just gonna be a tree study. So let's dive in. I'm gonna start opening up the sketchbook. I figured I'd open it up with you guys because I'm always curious what other artists use for sketchbooks. This is one brand that I've been trying out lately and I've been liking it so far. I like the way it handles watercolor. And so I like the size as well, that I can open it either this direction for like landscapes, or I can open it this way. So I also just like the size as well. It is pretty much like an 8x5". And then as far as the weight of the paper, it's about 90 pounds and has 80 sheets in it, which too, I like sketchbooks when it's not like too many pages, so you feel like you can fill it up. So what we're gonna do is open this up. I like to crease the page so it doesn't bow on me. And we're gonna do some tree studies. And the reason I like doing tree studies is it's kind of fun because they're a shape that doesn't have to be overly rigid and specific, and there's so many varieties of trees that you can fill up a whole page pretty easily with just tree studies. Now, if you want, you can kind of draw them in with a pencil, or you can just go straight into your paint and start kind of putting down the shapes of them. I've done both, so maybe on the top I'll kind of draw in some shapes, and then on the bottom I'll show you how I would kind of just freehand them. And the other reason too I really like that doing tree shapes is you can use the same color then throughout and put just down a few layers and get a pretty fun sketchbook page done. And so this is a great way to start off a sketchbook, or if you're just looking for an idea of what to do in your sketchbook, these are great. So I'm using a 2H pencil because the lead on it is harder, and so it won't really smudge and it won't be super dark. So let's get in some tree shapes. So you can see with these ones on the top that I just did in with pencil real quick, again, just kind of more of the contour, just edging of it, the outside edges. Now I can kind of come in, and to be honest, I was gonna use my 8" round brush, but I think I rather, or not my 8", just my 8 round brush, but I think I'd rather use a bigger size brush because again, when you're doing a quick study, the bigger the brush you use, the less detailed you're gonna get with it, and then also the quicker you can do it. Because again, studies shouldn't take that long, and I think sketchbook stuff in general should be stuff that is more quick and practicing something specific. So for instance, with these tree studies, maybe focusing on your shadows specifically, like maybe doing different colored shadows. So I'll show you maybe on the top 3, we'll do different shadows just to kind of like compare and contrast. So right now I'm just mixing up a light green. So I've got like my cad yellow, and then I'm gonna mix up some hooker's green. And to tone that down, I'm gonna use Green's Complement, which is red. So it's not too saturated. Now I'm gonna come in and just get this. Looks like I got my dog's hair in my paint. Actually, there we go, we're good. So I like to come in and just put down this first layer pretty quick. And again, I'm gonna kind of use this same coloring since we're dealing with, you know, all trees right now. I can come and kind of change the coloring slightly on my next 2 layers, but I'm putting down the lightest value right now. I also feel like using a bigger brush just kind of does the work for me a little bit more than if I had a smaller brush. I always like doing these little tiny accents on the outside edging of my trees, kind of just to give that look of, you know, that the form is broken, because you want trees to not feel like a solid shape. since there's, you know, a lot going on with the branches and the leaves and all that kind of stuff. And so if you have your solid form on the middle and the inside, and then when you get to that outside, just break that a little bit with some marks that are on the outside, and it'll kind of help just make that feel a little bit more organic and not like a solid mass. All right, I'm gonna get some more of this mixture. And down here, I'm gonna do a little bit more of just the freeform shapes, what I was saying, where like, I'm just gonna kind of let my brush have fun. Let it be maybe more of a thicker tree. And then again, since I went so thick, the sizing of my paper, I'm gonna go thinner on this one. Kind of like how I did up top. And then last but not least, so now I got this first layer down, I'm gonna go in and put in the tree trunks real quick. Even if it's slightly wet, that's okay. But I kind of want this first layer to dry just a little bit before I come in and start adding in my shadows on here. But you know, doing this tree study really fills up your sketchbook really quick, and you're gonna kind of learn a lot by doing just slightly different trees, and then coming in and just, again, I'm in a sketchbook, I do like 3 layers probably max. So this was the first layer on the trees, then I'll come in, do like a mid-value layer, and then one final layer at the end that you'll see. But right now I'm just gonna do the tree trunks and throw those in. And again, since this is like a sketchbook study practice time, what I'm doing right now is just even seeing how thin I can get with these tree, you know, the little tiny twigs coming off the main branches that are thicker. And so playing around with, you know, especially using a 14 round escoda. 14 is a pretty big size, but the tip on this is so nice that like it's fun to see if I do lighter pressure, I can really get that twig, that tiny line really thin and skinny, and being able to just have more brush control, practicing that in your sketchbook. You know, I went thicker in spots, thinner in spots, and so kind of just being a little more intentional with also like just what you're doing while you're painting, and you know, telling yourself, what should I practice right now as I'm doing this? And for me, in that, you know, a few minutes, it was practicing thin versus thin lines with just one brush. So now I'm going to let this kind of dry just for a second, and then I'm gonna come in, actually before I even let it dry, I'm gonna throw some grass down just on the bottom of these real fast. Okay, now I'm gonna let those dry for a second, then we'll come back in and add kind of that second layer to kind of start then adding in where the shadows are gonna be, and then one final layer after that. All right, took the dog out for a walk, came back. This is now dry. It could have even been slightly damp and I could have worked into it, but my golden retriever was going crazy. So did a walk, came back, and now for the next layer, I'm just gonna mix up like a mid-value green. And so I like putting in ultramarine blue into my green and a little bit of, again, red, just since it's green's complement. Once I've got that, I'm gonna start laying that in on all of these. And now my sun is gonna kind of come, or my light source is coming from this direction. So I'm just gonna hang to the right of my trees as I kind of lay in my shadows. And again, a lot of this right now is I'm just having fun with the brush, kind of holding a little bit higher up, just to get some practice with letting the brush do a lot of the work with these shapes. Now, I talked about how you could practice even different color theory in here. So those first top shadows I did all similar. Now the bottom, I'm gonna just even practice doing different coloring shadows. Maybe adding a little bit more ultramarine blue into the shadow for one. And then maybe for one, adding more, I like using cad orange a lot within my greens. A little bit of red in there. Oh, too much red. So you can see putting those two next to each other, this is a warmer shadow because it has that cad orange in it, versus the one next to it has ultramarine blue, so it's a little bit cooler. And then for my last one, I am going to do alizarin crimson, because that's another color I love to throw in for shadows. While I have these different kind of mid-value greens mixed up, I'm just gonna add a little bit into the ground as well. Okay, and then I'm gonna add a shadow really quick into the tree trunks. So mixing up a darker value of a brown. And then last but not least, I'm gonna just do a little bit darker of a shadow on all these, and I'm probably just gonna use a similar mixture to add in just a little bit of a really nice dark. I always try and save with something like this, the final dark, for that last layer. And then usually I would probably wait for this maybe to be more dry, but again, it's more of a sketchbook study. So I'm just gonna have fun with it, let it kind of go even into it, wet into wet right now, because it's not completely dry like I did my first layer. But even right now, comparing and contrasting, it's fun to see kind of how that ultramarine blue really played into this one versus the cad orange. And I love seeing just the differences and then noting that. So I'm gonna come in and just really mix up a nice dark green, put in a few darks, and call it good for the day. All right, and that is gonna finish up doing these tree studies, kind of put those in really quickly. I will let it dry real fast and just come back so that you can see the final kind of sketchbook page once it is dry. All right, now that this is dry, I can close up my sketchbook and be done with this study. And again, this is something that took maybe 15 to 20 minutes to do. And it's just a great way to kind of fill up a sketchbook, have fun playing with your brush, with thick, thin lines, or the color theory with playing with different color shadows. Just pick something as you're like having kind of fun in your sketchbook to kind of think about working on or experimenting with, to compare and contrast. That's usually what I like doing in my sketchbook. So I hope this will help you start to fill yours. I will see you guys in the next video. Like, subscribe, do all those things. I appreciate it so much. And if you're wanting more in-depth how to watercolor with over 10 hours of lessons, I have my Watercolor 101 course that I will link below. And I will see you guys in the next video.